Hello, beautiful people. So you've seen all the guides and you know what we do best. All that tall talk I do about big booty DPS. Well, if you're new to Necromancy and are feeling kind of stressed, and you're coming up short with the deeps despite trying your best, that's okay. Learning a new combat style is a hell of a test. You just need someone to show you the ropes so that way you don't have to guess. And of course, I have it all here for you in a way that's easy to digest. So just sit back, relax, and I'll do the rest. If you're new to PvM, Necromancy is going to be very great for you because you'll have easier access to high-tier weapons and armor with very good set effects, low upkeep costs, and less abilities to learn and keep track of. That said, if you're a Revel warrior, I will say now that bossing with Necromancy works best if you use keybinds. This is because a lot of the abilities work together and should be used in a certain order, and not necessarily whenever they're available. AFKing full revolution is very amazing with Necromancy though. Let's just go ahead and get right to the good stuff. Before we start, I actually want to show you something that's maybe not so obvious. You can turn off the automatic Necromancy ability and cast it manually instead if that's something that you want to do. Go to your settings, gameplay, skills and experience, and in Necromancy, just uncheck the first option that says auto attack. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. In order to achieve that thick, dumpy DPS, we're going to need to know what the abilities are and what they do. So first, let's talk about that. In Necromancy, we have abilities and incantations. Abilities require weapons and adrenaline, or ectoplasm for conjures, and incantations require runes. As you can see, I've got my scuba gear on, and I'm ready to take a deep dive into these abilities. First, we have the Necromancy attack. This is just a basic attack, and it's the one that's automatically on when you start the skill. It generates 9% adrenaline, and we like that. One of the reasons why Necromancy DPS can be so thick is because of the Conjures. These are your battle buddies from the city of who are going to go in and fight with you. The first one of these is the Skeleton, and it requires 0 adrenaline to conjure, so it's really nice to have, especially when you're in the middle of a fight and you forget to keep them alive. So our little skeleton friend, yeah, he can get very angry. You won't like him when he's angry. Well, you're gonna like it, but your target sure won't. When you use the command ability, the skeleton goes bing bang boom and hits really hard. I know you're not here to make guesses, but can you guess what this ability does? That's right, the Conjure Putrid Zombie ability conjures a putrid zombie. This is another conjure, and this one is stinky. I mean, they're probably all stanky because they're literally undead, but this one is stinkier than most, and it's going to inflict some poison damage as a result. Every conjure, of course, has a special attack that's unique to it. So when you use the zombie command ability, the zombie goes kaboom and hits everything within 2 tiles of it. Skeletons and zombies and ghosts, oh my! That's right, the third conjure that we have in Necromancy is a ghost, and he is out for revenge. I get it, it's hard to let stuff go sometimes. Yeah, so it might be a vengeful ghost, but it is a caring ghost. Some of the damage that your ghost deals is going to come back to you in the form of heals. Delicious. And what would be a conjure without a command ability? The ghost ability is actually really OP. Your target's going to take 2 times damage from all attacks, and this is capped at 35% extra damage, so honestly, this ability will make your DPS extra thick. Touch of Death is a very important basic ability. Not only is it going to generate 9% adrenaline, but it's also going to generate 4 necrosis stacks. What are necrosis stacks? Wow, what a great question. Necrosis, well, you can think of it like the seasoning of Necromancy. Necrosis enhances your Necromancy abilities. We're going to talk more about which abilities specifically later, but just know that necrosis is good. Well, okay, maybe you should also know that you can see necrosis on your buff bar. I guess that's kind of important too. If you think that the intro to my XUXo video was sus, wait till you hear the name of this ability. Finger of Death is a very important Necromancy ability that does absolute big booty, mega dumpy, thick cake damage. This is also one of the abilities that necrosis seasoning spices up, decreasing the adrenaline cost by 10% for each necrosis stack up to 6. Now I know we're all good necromancers who are changing the way that people see necromancy by asking the dead to work with us instead of forcing them to. But that doesn't apply to bad people. We're gonna steal their soul, well, part of their soul, and use it against them in battle. That's what Soul Sap is for. It's gonna generate 1 soul stack. How do you know how many soul stacks you have? Wow, what a great question. When you're using necromancy, above your head, you'll see some circles. If one of them is blue, you have part of a soul. This skill also generates 9% adrenaline, and trust me, you are going to want that when you're fighting with necromancy. So what are you gonna do with all those souls that you've sapped? Throw them at your target. That's right. Take your target's soul and throw it back in its face using Volley of Souls. It's like a respectful level of petty if you think about it. Next up, we've got Bloat to float your boat. This is a bleed. We like bleeds. In the game. Only in the game. This also applies bloated to the target for 10 hits. What is bloated? Wow, another great question. If your target is bloated, when it dies, it's going to infect up to 9 enemies within 1 tile for 4 hits. This is really great for RuneScape mobs that don't practice social distancing. The tier 70 Death Guard unlocks a weapon special attack called Death Grasp. This counts as a stun and it does big booty DPS. Be careful though because it is going to consume all of your necrosis stacks. To go burr, it requires all of the flavor. Next, we got Death Skulls. We got Death Skulls. We got Death Skulls. Why am I doing that? I don't know. Maybe because this ability bounces between you and your enemies that are within 5 tiles of you. Make sure you go get that XUXo cave so that way you don't have to use as much adrenaline to use this big booty damage ability. Next, we have Living Death, another ultimate ability. Cast this ability and turn into a spooky skeleton with some scary buffs that are going to terrorize your target. This ability lasts for 30 seconds, which is honestly enough time to have a good time. While you are a spooky skeleton, you're going to generate 2 necrosis stacks with your basic attacks. Touch of Death is going to give you an additional 6% adrenaline when you use it. Finger of Death is going to deal 1.5 times more damage. And Death Skull's cooldown is going to be reduced to 12 seconds. That means you can use it multiple times while you're under Living Death. Oh, and if that wasn't enough, the cooldowns of Touch of Death and Death Skulls is going to get reset automatically as soon as you cast this bad boy. That was a lot of information, but that was also a lot of abilities. Let's go ahead and continue this information dump while we talk about Incantations. Incantations is a fancy way to say necromancy spells. And yes, just like magic, if you're going to use a spell, you're going to need runes. In this case, we need necromancy runes. Flesh, bone, spirit, miasma. Miasma? 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 Kinda goes with the big booty theme. First up is the Bone Shield. This is truly amazing. It's going to allow us to use abilities that usually require a shield without having to switch to a shield. And it's always toggled on, so as long as you have your runes with you, all you have to do is use the ability that you want to. Between us, I've been using Lesser to save on rune costs a little bit. If you want to do big booty necromancy damage, you absolutely are going to need to use Threads of Fate. Threads of Fate recently got a big buff. Now it lasts for your next 3 abilities, 6.6 seconds if you're into math and numbers and such, but we don't do that around here. So your next 3 abilities are going to be cast on up to 4 additional enemies within 4 tiles of the target, and honestly, that is huge. Life Transfer is an incantation that allows you to give up your HP, 50% of it to be exact, to extend the duration of your Conjures. Why would you want to do this? Wow, you're just full of great questions today. Yes, of course you can always just use adrenaline to reconjure during combat. However, you can avoid this by giving up your HP. More adrenaline, more damage. Next, we have Invoke Death. This is going to apply a death mark to your target. What is a death mark? Man, You just can't stop with the good questions today. If your target is death marked, necromancy abilities are going to insta-kill it when it drops below 20% of its life points with a 30,000 HP cap. It's basically just free big booty damage because it's damage that you don't have to do. If you're wearing Death Dealer robes, there is a chance that Death Mark is going to be applied to your target without you having to use Invoke Death. This is something that you want to do if you're not using Death Dealer robes, or if the Death Dealer robes did not seal the deal. And last but certainly not least is Split Soul, Necromancy's ECB spec. So you know how the Split Soul prayer heals you, right? When you use Split Soul, the heals that you would have received from Soul Split get converted into damage. So yes, you do have to be soul splitting for this to work. So no heals, but your damage becomes thicker than Hermod's thighs. If you ask me, that's a pretty fair trade. So before we get into the real good stuff, I wanted to leave you with a list of other things that I haven't mentioned yet that is generally good to have if you want to do big booty necromancy DPS. The necromancy nihil is not useful everywhere, but definitely good in some very specific situations. So what are the big booty DPS strats? Well, that's why you're here, so let's talk about it. First, let's talk about death skulls. If you want to do big booty necromancy DPS, you are definitely going to want to have the Necromancy XOXo cape. This cape is going to decrease the adrenaline cost of death skulls and also increase the number of times that it hits. But wait, there's more. If you use Living Death while it's active, the Death Skull's cooldown is reduced to 12 seconds. I know we saw that earlier, but let's put it all together. So, if you're picking up what I'm putting down, what you can do is cast Death Skulls, then use an adrenaline potion, like an adrenaline renewal, then use Living Death, and your Death Skulls cooldown is going to be reset and reduced, allowing you to cast it up to 2 more times while you're still under the effects of Living Death. So yeah, you heard me right, that's 3 Death Skulls kinda close together, which is some pretty thick DPS. Death Skulls, Living Death, A-Pot, Death Skulls, build, Death Skulls, yum. Now let's talk about the Finger of Death and abilities that go well with it. Because what doesn't go well with a... Never mind. So remember, the Touch of Death basic ability gives you 4 Necrosis stacks, that seasoning of necromancy, every time you use it. And because you're a legend, you're also going to remember that you can have up to 12 Necrosis stacks at a time. So yeah, Touch of Death works well with Finger of Death. Why? Because it adds Necrosis stacks, and Finger of Death consumes up to 6 Necrosis stacks when you cast it, each stack reducing the amount of adrenaline that it costs to use that special finger. Okay, maybe I shouldn't call it that. More Necrosis stacks, more frequent finger usage. Oh god. Anyways, thick DPS. But that's not it. The Threads of Fate incantation allows you to hit multiple enemies at the same time, which you definitely remember because you are a legend. I think you can see where I'm going with this. Cast Threads of Fate and then use Finger of Death, and your DPS will be thicker than the air when the humidity is 97%. So that's Touch of Death, Threads of Fate, and Finger of Death. Perfect. What else can we do with those delicious Necrosis stacks? Once you have tier 70 necromancy weapons, you'll have access to a special weapon attack called Death Grasp, which you will remember because we definitely went over it earlier. Death Grasp will consume all necrosis stacks that you have available, so up to 12, and it's going to unleash a powerful punch when you activate that bad boy. Every necrosis stack consumed makes the big booty hit even thicker. And if you want more necrosis stacks, remember that Living Death effect also makes the necromancy basic attack give you necrosis stacks, 2 to be exact. Okay, let's move on to something a little more, spicy. Yeah, spicy. We like it spicy. If you find yourself in a position where you're soul splitting during a fight like the legendary pro gamer that you are, and you have more HP than you'll ever need, you can use the incantation Split Soul to up the thickness of your DPS even more. Split Soul takes the health that you would have gained from using the Soul Split prayer and turns it into delicious damage. But you definitely already know that because you 100% for sure watched through all of the ability explanations earlier. So no juicy heals, but you do get the juicy booty DPS, which I think is a fair trade. And you know what pairs really well with Split Soul? Bloat. Bloat does damage over time, and when the target dies, that bleed is applied to other targets, like we learned earlier, of course, and Split Soul makes that damage even juicier. Speaking of healing, Conjures are really important for Necromancy DPS. They go hard, but they don't last very long. I bet a few of you can relate. Anyways, ethical necromancers keep their Conjures alive by using the life transfer incantation. Yeah, so this is going to take a lot of your life points. Be ready for it. You can always reconjure your spirit friends, but it's going to cost a lot of your adrenaline, which you need to hit hard and be an absolute legend. It is good to remember that you can always reconjure your skeleton bestie with 0 adrenaline if you're in the trenches. On the topic of incantations, Invoke Death is another one that you'll want to consider using while you're out boss stomping. If you don't have your Death Dealer outfit on to do it for you, you can use Invoke Death to apply a death mark to the boss. This adds some nice padding to the big booty damage because it will instantly kill the target after it drops below 20% of its original life points. It's literally free damage. I mean, it costs some runes, yeah, but what's that in the grand scheme of things, especially since you're going to get 55% increased RNG from watching this video. You're about to get, like, literally so many drops. If you combo these abilities that I've talked about, you'll see a serious increase in your Necromancy DPS, especially if combined with other useful items that we talked about earlier, like the Reaver's Ring or the Majorat Aura. A basic rotation might look something like Death Skulls, Adrenaline Renewal, Living Death, Death Skulls, Vanguard Death, Split Soul, Bloat, Death Skulls, you get the point. Use these combos to your advantage. This is the way. And, of course, no Necromancy DPS guide would be complete without a Necromancy bar. Here's how I have mine. Of course, you should do what makes sense for you, but this is what I do, and it works for me. I think I do okay, not amazing, okay. And that's it. Now that you finished Big Booty Necromancy DPS Bootcamp, you're a certified damage dealing, soul stealing, bone shield wielding legend, and you're ready to go out there and kick names and take butt. I mean, kick butt and take names. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to help you at least a little bit, or you had a good laugh. Like, subscribe, share, and most importantly, be kind to one another. See you next time, friends.